Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. V, where we are intentional about connecting you with other entrepreneurs that have overcome and want to provide value to the audience. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches nurses to work from their computers anywhere around the world, make money, and own their own time. Our featured guest today is Tameka McKneely. So, hi, Tameka.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. So, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us who you are. What do you do?
Okay. I am Tameka McKneely. I am the multi-passionate entrepreneur, which just means I have several businesses. But my main lane is I am a compliance consultant, and I help businesses gain access to millions through either funding or working with the government. And I do that by making sure that they have foundationally sound and compliant businesses set up. If they are a startup or if they're an established business or corporation, I help them manage and start and manage their compliance programs.
Okay, so now tell me about compliance. Have you always worked in compliance?
I have not. I have most of my career worked in healthcare, but for the past 12 years, I've worked in compliance, healthcare compliance.
So now, when you say you've worked in healthcare, what roles did you have in healthcare?
Wow. So I initially started as a pharmacy technician. Then I was, excuse me, then I was a CNA. Then I moved over to the healthcare insurance side. So I worked as a pre-authorization, benefits, compliance, management. I've worked from the bottom to the top, and now we're here.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Gotcha. And so when you pivoted outside of healthcare, you decided to do this. So tell me how that worked. Like, why did you come out of healthcare compliance, like specifically in healthcare, to doing it for yourself or other businesses?
sure. So I left healthcare compliance. Well, I haven't left healthcare compliance actually. So I
Okay.
still do
Okay.
it corporately as a consultant, but I left corporate America because I had suffered two layoffs in within 2 years, and I just didn't like that they had my fate in their hands because it was
Yeah.
basically political. It was politics, corporate rifts, merging companies, and I just didn't like the fact that they could just call me in and say, we no longer need your services. So I decided that I was not going to go back into corporate America. And I had been an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. But when I actually became a full-time entrepreneur and got serious about it, I decided to ramp up the business that I had, which was I'm a creative. So I do everything from make bath products to build furniture and everything in between.
Love the
So I
bath products, by the way. Love them, love them, love them. Okay, go
thank
ahead.
thank you. So I've been doing that for over 20 years. I've been a creative for over 20 years. But when I decided I wasn't going to go back into corporate America, I decided to ramp up that business, actually make it a fully legit business. And I decided to do healthcare compliance as a consultant. So that way I didn't have to deal with the politics of corporate America. And basically, anybody that's worked in corporate America knows that there is politics and you're not actually able to do your job. So I wasn't actually able to get the company compliant. I had to just work around the parameters that were set for me. And because
That
of
is
who I am, I want the company to be compliant because that's what I do. So I want to fix the issues, not just put a band-aid on them. So when I have the opportunity to do it on my own, where I could come in, you're basically bringing me in to fix the problem. So I don't have to deal with all of that politics, political things in corporate America. So I took that opportunity, and along with my creative business and the consulting, I just kind of fell into doing it for small businesses because I had built a few small businesses, and I learned so much along the way when I decided to be a full-time entrepreneur that I was like, we just don't know about this. And we just don't know what we don't know. And being who I am again, when I know something, I want everyone to know it. So I'm like, our small businesses, female minority small businesses, are suffering because we just don't know the resources that are out there. We don't know the things that are available to us. So I took it upon myself to start doing the research, the things that I learned. I dived into them. Being compliance, I do research. So anytime my friends will tell you when they're talking to me and I'm like, well, I don't know. And then a minute later, they'll be like, so what'd you find out? Because they know I'm over here. I'm Googling and I'm looking it up. And I'm trying to, I would literally read the entire Wikipedia page and I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, this is this and this is this. So my friends know who I am. So they get lots of information out of me. And that's how I came into doing it for small businesses. I just researched it. I found the resources. I signed up for procurement opportunities and I just learned the process. So now I'm here to spread the word and help us be successful.
Yes, and because you have told me even, and I tell people this all the time when it comes to kind of how I started, because when we were talking about business and your business banking and the fact that you would if you combine your monies, your personal money and your business money, then you're piercing the corporate veil, right? And so those are the things that I didn't like. I just didn't know it initially. And I think that it was way back when we were talking about the commingling of money. And then that I was like, okay. And then you reinforce that with your knowledge. And I was like, okay. Because one of the things that I think that we have to realize is that whenever we're going to business, we're not going to know everything. It's just like whenever you go into nursing, you don't know everything. You don't know. I mean, business can be complex depending on your industry, and the body is complex, right? And there's always this evidence-based practice that is coming up based on, how medicine is going. And then of course in business is very much in the same way. There's a whole lot of things that you don't know. And the laws change all the time, right? And because the laws change, you have to be up on the laws. So I love the fact that you are like that. So now tell us a pitfall that I think that you have seen that businesses have failed in as it relates to compliance. Tell us just one, for example.
The biggest one I would say is exactly what you mentioned, commingling funds. Not realizing that you can't use your business bank account to pay your mortgage or to buy your groceries. Sometimes when we have certain types of business structures. So if you have an LLC or a corporation, you can't commingle those funds. Now, if you have a sole proprietorship, there's no veil. You and your business are one. But when you create a particular business structure, you have separation of business and personal. So when you do that, you cannot mix that money. Now, not saying that you can't pay yourself. You can definitely pay yourself, but you can't take the money out of your business account and use it for personal reasons. You have to create that stream of record where if you pay yourself and then you pay your mortgage, that's fine. But you can't mix those funds. The IRS is they have people that they have on staff that are looking for businesses that are commingling their funds. They literally are spending all day looking for people that are mixing their business with their personal life. And that is a big deal because, like I say, that'll pierce your corporate veil. So your LLC, where you feel like you have that limited liability, you no longer have it.
Okay, so now tell us the difference between, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish what you were saying.
I was just saying you no longer have that liability protection when you mix those funds.
So tell us the difference between sole proprietorship, limited liability company, S Corp, and C Corp, because those are the different ways in which you can set up your company. So tell us the difference between those.
Okay, so your sole proprietorship is basically owned by you. It is the easiest way to start a business. And you have a sole proprietorship anytime you start doing business activity. You don't have to set anything up. If you start operating as a business, you are a sole proprietor. So when I started my creative business 20 years ago, I was a sole proprietor. I did business activity, but I did not set up an LLC.
Okay.
You file the information, you file your income with your regular income. It's all one. So there is no protection with a sole proprietorship. If anything happens and someone sues your business, your personal assets are at risk. So if you have any type of litigation brought against you in a sole proprietorship, they can take your home. They can clear out your personal bank account. So there's no protection in that. If you set up an LLC, you do have limited protection. And a lot of people believe that if I set up an LLC, I am protected. My business, I can't be held liable for anything in my business. I'm completely protected. And that's not true either. If there is any type of negligence, anything that you do, negligent basically in your business, that can clean out your liability. So that will also create administrative dissolution if you do something.
So explain to us what negligent means. Like, not what negligent means, because we know what negligent means, but give us an example of being negligent.
So if you have, just say you have a business where you have a driver and the driver is on their cell phone and they have a car accident. That's a negligent act. So in that case, your limited liability is dissolved. So if the person that they hit, the car that they hit, or if they hit a person, God forbid, that person can sue you and your personal assets because the driver was negligent as they were operating your business. So if you are a nurse and you do something negligent, you forget to chart, something happens to a patient, then your limited liability is dissolved. Anything negligent or deliberate that is fraudulent, you can lose your liability protection in that. And also commingling your funds can make you lose your liability protection.
Now can you, but you should have insurance to counter that, correct?
Yes. So your insurance will counter that, but they still can come after your personal assets if you are negligent.
So
your insurance will pay, but your personal assets are still at risk if you're negligent.
Okay. All right, cool. So now S Corp.
So an S Corp it's a business, but it's more of a tax classification. So it holds the same type of benefits as a corporation, where in a limited liability corporation, you have, like I said, limited liability, but in a corporation, the corporation is completely separate from the personal. So there is no liability in a corporation. There's no personal liability. Even if you're negligent, there's no personal liability in a corporation. But a corporation is a lot harder to set up. It's a lot more paperwork. It's a lot more upkeep to set up a corporation than it is to set up an LLC. But an S Corp is basically, it can be up to 100 owners. They all have to be U.S. citizens, which is different from a corporation. They do not have to be U.S. citizens in a corporation. And it can be more than 100 owners. But even in an LLC, you can, I'm going to get into a little tax thing, but I am not a tax professional. So with an LLC,
let's get that straight. Let's get that straight.
Disclaimer out here right now. I am not giving financial advice, but with an LLC, so an LLC is not classified. It's not recognized by the IRS. So when you have an LLC, you either have to be, if you're a solopreneur, you are taxed as a sole proprietor. If you are a partnership in an LLC, you are either taxed as a partnership or as a S Corp. So an S Corp basically avoids double taxation. In a corporation, you have double taxation where they are taxed on their revenue and then they are taxed on their, the people in the corporation are taxed. So like the income tax and then the corporation is taxed. So they're taxed twice on the same funds. In an S Corp, that helps you to avoid that double taxation. So you get the benefits of a corporation and the benefits of an LLC. So you get that liability protection. The corporation is separate, but you don't get the double taxation in an LLC. In an S Corp. And as an LLC, you can elect to be taxed as an S Corp. So you'll save money. You'll actually pay payroll taxes instead of self-employment taxes. But when you add it up and kind of total it out, it's not a lot of difference. It's just a classification. But some people would rather, especially if you have employees, be taxed as an S Corp than in partnership.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry,
And why, if they're taxed as a partnership, the reason why they want to do that is because of the less taxes that they have to pay?
An S Corp. They want to elect to be an S Corp to be taxed less.
Okay. As opposed to being a partnership. I got you. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So S Corp, basically you get taxed less than a partnership. Do you get taxed less as an LLC? I just want to make that clear. Let's go back.
So as an LLC, you can either be taxed as a partnership or S Corp. So if you're taxed as a partnership, you pay self-employment taxes. You pay on your income. As an S Corp, you pay payroll taxes. So that basically when people have employees, they elect to be an S Corp. So when you become an LLC, they ask you to decide, do you want to be an S Corp or do you want to be a partnership? This is if you have more than one member of the owner.
I gotcha.
So if you elect to be an S Corp, you really want to talk to your tax professional, talk to your attorney before you decide, because if you decide to be an S Corp, you cannot go back to being a partnership. You can't go back and forth. So you can't be an S Corp this year and back to a partnership next year. Now you can go from being a partnership to an S Corp because that's basically like an upgrade, but you can't go back. So you definitely want to talk to your tax professional before you decide to go up to be an S Corp, because there's no turning back. So if you don't have staff, if you're not paying payroll taxes, you can't go back to being a partner.
Gotcha. Now, C Corp.
So C Corp, that is an organization that is completely separate from its owners. So it's, like I said, it's a little harder to set up. There's a lot more paperwork. There's a lot more upkeep. You actually have a board of directors with the C Corp, which is just a corporation. You have a board of directors that basically run the operations, control the company versus the owners controlling. And in a corporation, you actually are taxed twice. So as I mentioned, you're taxed on the revenue of the company, and then you're taxed on the income. So the income that you pay to your employees is taxed because they pay income tax, and then the corporation is taxed because it's taxed on its revenue. So within LLC, you actually are a pass-through organization. So you don't pay taxes. You file taxes, which are due next week for those that don't know, on the 15th of March, but you file taxes, but you don't actually pay them through your LLC.
Go ahead.
You pay the taxes on your personal taxes, but you actually have to file a paper return on your LLC. But in a corporation, you actually pay taxes through the corporation.
So they're due next week for those who are S Corp and those who are C Corp, correct? Not LLC and sole proprietorship.
If you are an LLC with more than one member, they are due next week.
Gotcha.
Yes, but if you are a solopreneur, no, they are due with your personal taxes. But if you have more than one member, so if you are an LLC that's a partnership, yes, your taxes are due on March 15th.
That's good to know. Good information. Good
and
information. If you don't
file them, you will get a late fee.
I love it. All right, so now tell us some other juicy stuff about the corporate compliance world.
Oh, juicy stuff. So compliance is definitely not juicy or sexy or anything like that.
That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, do not get it twisted. Compliance is not fun. It just is what it is. It's black and white, which is why I think that I love it personally, because it is black or white. Like, I don't have to argue compliance. I don't have to try to convince you about compliance. You're either compliant or you're not. And you're either at risk or you're not. So it's basically just the laws that we have to follow to make sure that everybody is doing the same thing, make sure that everybody is working toward, it's uniformity. So just like the laws of the land, you can't have one set of laws for this particular people and another set of laws for these people. Everyone has to follow the same guidelines. And in compliance, that's basically what it is. And we don't, as small businesses, we don't think that we have the laws and regulations. Of course, we know we have to have a business structure and we have to have an EIN, but we don't realize that the same laws that apply to the big corporation and the same laws that apply to the hospital, they also apply to us. We have to follow those same laws, and we don't necessarily think about that when we're setting up small businesses. We just feel like I have an LLC, I have an EIN, I'm good to go. But we can really get in trouble behind not following certain guidelines and certain things that have been put in place for businesses. So, yeah.
So now tell me about certain things that would get you in a lot of trouble, as it relates to keep you out of jail stuff. Okay. So tell me about that stuff.
So the major things in compliance are, I know it nursing and medical staff is HIPAA, of course. We have to make sure that we're compliant with HIPAA if we're handling PHI or anything like that. And those things can...
And PHI is what?
Protected health information. So your client's information, their name, address, all of that, the stuff, when you put it together, it creates that person. So we have to be compliant with HIPAA, have to make sure that we're not having any breach in HIPAA information that can not necessarily send you to jail. There's only been one person that's been sent to jail behind a HIPAA compliance issue.
And who is that?
It's a doctor that was in California.
Mm-hmm.
He actually accessed a bunch of celebrity health information because he knew
none of his business. Ain't none of his business.
He was getting fired, so he accessed this information, and he actually was sent to jail for a few months. But other than that, HIPAA normally costs you a fine, which as small businesses, we don't have, disposable money to just be paying fines. Wow. And they're not small fines. So I was just doing some research a couple of days ago about some OIG fines, which is
what is OIG?
The Office of Inspector General.
Thank you.
We are acronymed up. So OIG is a subsidiary of HHS, which is Health and Human Services. Okay. So they regulate fraud and abuse. And there were several fines right now, there are several fines for people that have misrepresented CARES information. So the CARES Act with COVID. So they are, of course, going back like they said they would and auditing these records. And they're finding that these people have misrepresented their businesses. And now there are fines. And I've seen fines $250,000 and $95,000 for people that have misrepresented their business to get the CARES money. So whether that was a PPP loan or an EIDL loan, those things are now being looked at. So that's one of the biggest things now is that they are auditing those records. So those people that may have said, my business has 20 employees, and they presented this, and now they're finding out, well, you've been filing your taxes and you haven't filed that you have 20 employees. So where did that come from? Ooh. So yeah, now people, I don't know why people don't understand that there is a way for people to check
whether you got 20 employees or not. I mean,
exactly. You have been filing taxes. If you have never said you had 20 employees, how all of a sudden now you have 20 employees? And we just gave you $5 million. And yeah, so that's that's one of the biggest things that can get you in trouble. Just misrepresenting your business. I saw another one that was there was a laboratory. I know that's really big now, is the CLIA lab. There was a lab that was filing a code that was a 2-part code, and they were only providing one part of the service. So they were being paid for
both parts,
both services, and they weren't providing that. And that cost them about $95,000.
Well,
I'm pretty sure they didn't make $95,000. But that's what compliance is. I mean, they're gonna charge you, and then if you are constantly non-compliant, it's gonna add up. And we don't have that kind of money in the small business. I don't care if you're making $1 million. I don't have $50,000 to hand over to someone, and then I still have to get my business compliant. So even after I pay the fine, I still have to get my business compliant. So it's best to be proactive. It's best to stay on top of it. Make sure that you are following the guidelines and keeping your business safe.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Tameka, for coming today and getting us all the way together, okay? Because you keep me together, okay? So tell everyone how they can find you, find your services, because you have a course on how to be compliant, because, we need this. So tell us where we can find you.
Definitely. So you can find me at TamekaMcKneely.com. So as I mentioned, I'm multi-passionate, so you can find everything that I do on that website. But I do have a few resources that can help you get your business compliant. I have a resource guide that is basically a DIY. It has all the links, all the information that you need to set up a compliant business, from naming your business to getting your minority certifications. I also have a masterclass that includes that resource guide. It's a 2.5-hour class that I teach the resource guide. I recently started a coaching program, which is a step up from the masterclass. It is a 90-day coaching program where we basically walk through setting up your business. You are getting weekly masterminds where we are setting up each step in your business. So you really just have to show up. At the end of the 90 days, you have a compliant business set up. I also do set up and manage compliance programs. So if you are a business and you need a compliance program, we can do a compliance risk assessment to gauge the risk of your business and how compliant you are currently and what you'll need to do to get compliant. And then if you want to set that up, I can help you with that, and I can help you manage it. So basically like an external compliance department. I know a lot of small businesses don't have a compliance department. So you can use me as a resource and use me to be your compliance department, where I will house all your policies and procedures, your licenses, and all of that. Make sure that you stay compliant. Make sure you stay on top of it. Do training. I know you're supposed to do annual HIPAA training, compliance training. I'll have all of that available for anyone that wants to have their compliance program managed. So you can find me at TamekaMcKneely.com. Definitely book a connection call with me. Let's chat. We can figure out what the best route is for your business.
I love that. I love that, because did you always have the coaching side with the 90 days? Had you always had that?
No, I just started that. So I started the coaching program because I had people that took my masterclass and they were like, I got great information. I love it. I'm starting, but sometimes I need a little more help. So I used to offer a la carte services where if you needed like your certification, I jump on the phone individually with you and help you set up your certification. But I decided to do the coaching program. So it would be more of a group coaching. So you would get access to other business owners, and we would walk through it as a group. That way I can reach more people than doing individual calls. And it was just basically on the need. They wanted more support. So I said, okay, well, let's do a coaching program where I actually walk you through setting everything up. And then, because we don't know what we don't know.
Right. So, and it's the accountability, number one.
Right.
And it is the and I love the fact that you just did what you basically did was a market analysis. And one of my mentors, she talked about that market analysis. You need a market analysis in order to understand what your customer needs. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean that they want it, right?
Exactly.
And so understanding what they need is huge. And I love how you pivoted, right, based on the need of your client. So that's amazing. So you are the bomb.com. You have rocked it out. I love it. Thank you for coming here. So we have the Nurse Recharge Summit that is coming up on April 23rd, 2022. We will be learning how to recharge nurses or anyone else who really wants to be recharged, and how to transition it into entrepreneurship if you choose. So join us on April 23rd. It's going to be on a virtual platform. It will be amazing. The speakers are absolutely phenomenal. So you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day. Bye-bye.